Chris Stephens.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It is a pleasure to take part in this debate and follow my honourable friend from South Down, who has consistently spoke with passion on this issue. And I would like to obviously thank the member for Kingston upon Hull North for securing this debate and for chairing the APPG on this issue. Mr Deputy Speaker, I rise as a Scottish member representing a Scottish constituency in this debate for two reasons. Firstly, on behalf of constituents like Cathy Young, a Stage 1 widow and a member of the Scottish Infected Blood Forum, who, like me, wishes to express solidarity to those in other parts of the UK who find themselves in a different scheme, but also to make the reasonable point that Scottish members of this place will find that they have constituents who are victims of infected blood who will be covered by two different schemes, because the infection did not take place in Scotland, but elsewhere in the UK. And I think that that is a very important point, that we will find honourable members in other parts of the UK who will find that they will have constituents who are part of the Scottish scheme, and who will, it looks like, benefit greater than that. Now, my constituent Cathy Young wrote to me last night, Mr Deputy Speaker, where she said, "I think for me personally, being a widow, obviously those still living with the horror of this disaster must be financially looked after, and not with payments that people feel that once again they're just being fobbed off. But I would like both widows and the deceased person's estate, like children or parents of children who have passed away, to be recognised, and not with an insulting payment being offered. Our community deserve and demand the respect that has been denied us and the justice that is long overdue. And I send my total support to all those infected and affected by this disaster." Secondly, Mr Deputy Speaker, I wish to raise issues with the proposed Scottish scheme that require this place to complete some work so that those infected in Scotland can receive their compensation. As the Haemophilia Society point out, the Scottish scheme is comparatively more generous. The Scottish Discretionary Support Scheme will also be better administered, with patient involvement in governance, a goal to minimise means testing and assessments, and a commitment to continue existing ongoing payments and ensure no beneficiary is worse off under the new support arrangements. Excuse me. According to analysis, the Department of Health could adopt many aspects of the Scottish scheme and still fall within its allocated budget. The All-Party Parliamentary Group is calling for the Government to adopt these measures, particularly in relation to bereaved partners, and to reverse their plans for a profit-making private administrator of the discretionary scheme. Any additional funds required to support those affected could be found, as the motion says, from the 2013 sale of the government stake in Plasma Resources UK. Mr Deputy Speaker, there are differences between the schemes. Annual payments for those with HIV and advanced hepatitis C will be increased in Scotland from £15,000 a year to £27,000 a year, a figure used because that reflects the average earnings in Scotland. Those with both HIV and hepatitis C will have annual payments increased from £30,000 to £37,000 to reflect additional health needs when a recipient dies. Their spouse or civil partner will continue to receive 75% of the annual payment. Those infected with chronic hepatitis C will receive a £50,000 lump sum payment, which is previously £20,000, meaning an additional £30,000 for those who have already received the lower payment. A new support and assistance grant scheme will be established in Scotland to administer and provide more flexible grants to cover additional needs. And the Scottish Government funding for this scheme is to increase from £300,000 to £1 million per year. As recommended, the Scottish Government will aim to deliver the new scheme through a single body, so that those affected no longer need to apply to more than one body for funding. However, Mr Deputy Speaker, the timing of the Scottish-wide payment system will depend on both Her Majesty's Revenues and Customs and the Department of Health. And I would ask that the Minister outline in her response to this debate what discussions the Department have had with HMRC to pass on the relevant tax orders so that payments can be made to those entitled to compensation and that they can receive this without the minimum of fuss. This will ensure that those who receive compensation are not liable to tax. This has to happen whichever mechanism is used to make the new payments. To use the existing scheme to make the new payments, I understand all the devolved nations must agree, and at this moment only Scotland is signed up to do that. Mr Deputy Speaker, before the Scottish scheme is established, there are important decisions to be taken, which include changes to the thresholds for receiving ongoing support, a re-examination of the ability of those with incomplete medical records to apply, an appeals procedure for those who think they should be in the Scottish scheme, and that may very well happen to those resident in Scotland but were affected elsewhere who may wish to apply to the Scottish scheme, a procedure for converting ongoing payments into a lump sum payment, and how the new discretionary scheme will operate in practice. The affected community will broadly welcome the replacement of the 5 trusts with a single scheme administrator. However, the news that the new administrator under the proposed English scheme is likely to be a profit-making private company, something which was not mentioned in the consultation documents, will be met with considerable concern. As I understand it, the tender process for a new scheme administrator started in September 2016 and is now expected that, following a transition period, the new scheme administrator will take over in May 2017. It appears that that deadline is now being pushed forward. It is of great concern to many honourable members that Atos and Capitat have attended Department of Health meetings to discuss potentially bidding for this contract. It will be of utmost importance that the new supplier understands the complex needs of scheme beneficiaries and deals with all correspondence in a sympathetic way. And I think all of us have concerns that if, as is likely, the successful bidder is a private company, it is not clear how the discretionary aspects of the scheme will then be delivered. Will the Department of Health will own and publish a set of principles for discretionary support, and will they hold a budget, or will it be up to the scheme administrator to consider applications for grants and other support? The Scottish scheme has an alternative option for a scheme administrator with more beneficiary involvement, and the original all-party parliamentary group report contained similar recommendations. In terms of discretionary support, the Scottish discretionary support scheme will be better funded, with its funding set to more than treble, whereas the English scheme will see a modest 25% increase in 2018-19. Mr Deputy Speaker, there are a couple of issues I want to raise just before I conclude my remarks. There are a number of concerns been made, principally around some of the issues that were raised by the member for Worthing West, and that is in relation to health records. We know for a fact that people infected by this disaster have on death certificates not the words HIV or hepatitis C, for very understandable reasons at the time, because of the stigma that was attached to those conditions. I would like to ask the Minister if the scheme administrator or the government is considering that issue, and that there are people infected by this where their death certificates say something different, but medical records will indicate. And I'll give way to the member for Willington.
I'm grateful, Member. I'll do it very briefly. I think he's made a very good point to the Minister. The other question, which he may have been putting, but if he doesn't, I will. How will government try to get to those who may have died 25 years ago, whose spouses may not know about this offer? Not everyone is involved in the networks.
Christie. Well, I think that's very important, and I think it's also up to us as honourable members to raise that issue with our constituents, and newsletters and all the rest, because he's quite right that there are people who don't know who've lost partners years ago about that, and I thank him for his intervention. So I hope the Minister will consider that point. So there's clear points about tax to ensure that compensation is not subject to tax. That would be ludicrous. And the issue of death certificates. And I thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to participate in this debate, and for all honourable members who have contributed. It's been a first-class debate. Thank you, sir.